Hi folks, so we have the full moon in Capricorn here, at least on the Pacific West Coast of the United States on Monday morning, early Monday morning, 4:38 a.m. or something like that. So today is Saturday afternoon, certainly within the next 48 hours. And as you know, full moons are times of escalations, there can be times of visibility, there can be times of completions, there can be times of things coming to a head, there could be times of meltdowns and tantrums. As I've said, the pot of milk coming to a boil and spilling over. And as I always bears repeating, if you are the one throwing a tantrum, pay attention to the emotional and intuitive truths that are bubbling up for you. If you're on the receiving end of a tantrum, of someone else's bowl of milk or pot of milk boiling over, then do listen and pay attention to it, because there are emotional truths that are suppressed that may well be coming out. The moon's full disk is illuminated by the sun. The sun stands for our, one should rightfully and technically say, conscious self, or but really the way it tends to operate is a subconscious self, us at the soul level, at the real level. And the moon represents our engagement with the world around us, our engagement with 3D reality, where our attention is going, where we are getting energy, giving energy, emotionally engaged, where things are happening. Indeed, if all you look at is where the moon is transiting in your natal chart and where the moon is transiting in the lunar return, I'm not going to expand on that with this video. This video is for people across the spectrum of astrology comfort. So there'll be people who don't know what a lunar return is, and I think that's okay. And there'll be people who know what a lunar return is, and that's wonderful. So hopefully there's something here. I'm trying to cater to as many people as possible in a general video, which is what this is. But if you look at where the moon is transiting in your lunar return chart and your regular natal birth chart, it will give you a pretty good snapshot of what it is that you're contending with at that time. And so our emotional responses, our intuitive response, indeed the moon is supposed to stand for us even more than the sun is in a lot of traditional astrology, particularly Jyotish or Vedic astrology. Whereas in Western astrology, the sun is what stands for us. And I will leave it to people who feel argumentative to debate on this, but our subconscious, our personality self comes face to face with our truthful self or our real self. Truthful self, real self, subconscious self. I don't think that's the right word. Our soul self. Our self with a capital S. How about that? Our self with a capital S illuminates our self with a lowercase self, S. So the sun with the uppercase S illuminates the disk of the lowercase self, the person, the personality that is engaging with the world around us and getting swept up in it and getting attached to it and dealing with blah, 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 blah. And so, offers, culminations, it is a full moon, it happens every 28 days. It's more interesting just to see where the energy is going rather than treat it like an eclipse. Now, this particular full moon makes a really positive aspect to Jupiter in Taurus. We've been talking a lot about the sign of Taurus. We've been talking about the fact that the North Node is transiting Taurus. Soon it will enter Aries. But we've also talked about the fact that the last of the Taurus North Node eclipses of this round of eclipses occurs on October 28th, if I recall correctly. And so the sign of Taurus continues to be of interest and is where a lot of our energy should be going in terms of developing whatever we need to develop and cementing what we need to cement. That is where the magic is. Now, I've been saying, if you're going to follow the path of the North Node, do it in a grounded manner so that it doesn't kind of take you on a wild ride. By wild ride, I mean a ride where your material security ends up being threatened by moving in a direction that feels or has a sense of calling, but without the appropriate anchors in place, it can become all about the calling, which requires an extraordinarily courageous and adventurous spirit that that a lot of people do not have, and that I don't necessarily feel the need to recommend. So there's nothing wrong with remaining grounded and being able to meet needs and keeping a standard of living at a certain level while you pursue whatever it is that you're supposed to pursue. Different people have a different level of engagement with this principle, so I will let you determine what that is for you. Now, outside of that, as we know, Jupiter entered the sign of Taurus in May, as I recall, and is going to be here till about the middle of next year, 2024. And where Jupiter goes, it ends a 12 to 13-year cycle and starts a 12 to 13-year cycle. Indeed, a Jupiter transit, one astrologer I talked to referred to it as an auspicious new beginning. I don't see the need to change that phrase. And beginnings can also mean endings. So very often with Jupiter, what I see, and clients have heard me give this analogy, Jupiter comes in, sees what needs to be ended or removes it. At the very least, that much is done. And then either the space is created for the new beginning, or the first drops are the trickles that are going to turn into a river over the next 12 to 13 years start, or there's maybe a little bit more of a new beginning. But the ending is often clear and pronounced. Now, what that ending means to you, where Taurus is in your chart, what that, what house it occupies, what that house stands for, you're going to have to figure out for yourself. But the full moon in Capricorn trines, supports, throws a supportive light, throws a hand to Jupiter in Taurus to help create this new beginning. Okay, now we had a lot of supportive trines occurring between the sign of Capricorn and the planets that were in Taurus in November, December especially of last year, 2023, into January. Okay, when we had a lot of planets transiting Capricorn at the time that they normally do, and we had Mercury retrograde in Capricorn at the end of December to January as well. And the first phase of the year, as some of you who've been following my videos know, occurred starting November 2023, developing assertively in December of 2023, creating a portal or an opportunity that we were able to take by the middle of February, but that phase ended by about April or May of this year. And now we're dealing with the second half of this year that requires us to level up in many ways. And it is a very complicated time right now, and a very complicated second half of the year, with Venus getting ready to go retrograde on the 23rd of July, and Mercury going retrograde a month later. Venus going retrograde in Leo, Mercury going retrograde in Virgo. And complicated aspects being made as planets transited the sign of Gemini to planets in Pisces, and those transits will become even more complicated and intensified relatively shortly as some of these planets start to enter the sign of Virgo. We've got Mars and Venus already in Leo, Mars getting ready to go into Virgo. The Sun is going to enter Leo by in another 20 odd days time. Mercury will enter Leo before that. And as these planets make their way through Leo, they're going to enter Virgo, and from Virgo they're going to oppose Saturn and oppose Neptune. So while all these retrogrades are happening, we're going to have these oppositions to challenging planets, Saturn and Neptune, by the planets that are transiting Virgo. There's going to be a Mercury retrograde in Virgo. There's going to be a Venus retrograde in Leo. There's a sense of things developing and pregnant, and a consummation devoutly to be wished between Mars and Venus, but it gets interrupted, it gets throttled, it gets stopped when Venus goes retrograde. And that conjunction doesn't happen until February of next year in the opposite sign of Aquarius. It's all very fascinating if you're an astrologer like me. So there's a lot of energy of preparation. However, before that energy of preparation takes hold, as we look again over the next 2 weeks or so, I would encourage everyone to continue to be in a space of forward momentum and forward movement as assertively as possible till about July the 15th, or even as far as July the 20th or so. Once Venus starts to go retrograde, things are going to start to become more complicated. And once we head into late August with the Mercury retrograde, there's a lot of catching up to. You may think that not a lot of progress has been made in April, May, June, and July, especially May, June, and July. but it actually has. And it may not see external manifestation quite yet, but there's a lot that has been shifting. Astrolog, there's a lot of groundwork being laid. We don't start to see after the middle of July. We don't start to see forward movement again till the middle of October. Well, technically middle of September, because by then Mercury's direct and Venus is direct. So I should say that. But by the time the shadow period, let's just say the middle of September, and then till the end of the year, it's relatively clear. Mercury will go retrograde again in Capricorn, entering Sagittarius at the end of blah 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 blah. Okay, let's come back to this full moon. Why did I go back and do this whole thing? It was to draw attention to the energies that may have been present, full of promise, pregnant with opportunity perhaps in November, but especially December of last year, 2023. There's something about this full moon supporting Jupiter and Taurus that has a similar kind of, here is something possible. Now, I don't know whether it is going to be something concrete, whether it is going to be something internal, whether it is going to be some form of internal and emotional and intuitive decisiveness. It may well be that. And it may well be an emotional and intuitive decisiveness in the absence of factual, logical, mind-based, cognitive surety. I say this because the other transit that this full moon makes is that it opposes Mercury. So we've got the sun in Cancer, we've got the moon in Capricorn opposite each other. Yesterday, on June the 30th, the sun and Mercury came together, and Mercury by now is starting to move ahead of the sun. Okay, so a certain important part of the Mercury cycle in Taurus, I'm not going to expand on this, completed yesterday, and we're now in phase 3 of this. And this phase 3 is going to continue until Mercury goes retrograde on August 23rd. I hope I have that date right. So I'm going to have to do a separate video on that aspect of things. However, it could be that we've reached a certain point in our Taurian developments that we reach a certain place of, as I said, emotional and intuitive decisiveness. And we say, you know what? This is what I'm going to stake. This is what I'm going to lay. This is how I'm going to. This is my vision for how it is that I am going to. I'll use a very 2023 word, and it's not just a 23. Manifest something that continues to support the upcoming eclipse and all the work that the North Node and Uranus and Jupiter are doing in Taurus. Here's how. And because Mercury was just conjunct the Sun yesterday, Mercury does not have a lot of power. We have to wait for Mercury to clear the rays of the Sun so that this kind of, again, when we say, when Mercury and the Sun conjunct, there's a download to Mercury from the Sun. There is a conjunction, there's a meeting up of our mind with ourself with a capital S. And from there, Mercury takes that and is going to move forward in terms of communication, travel, transactions, contracts. It's going to move forward till August 23rd. I would certainly say that when it comes to contracts, any contracts that can be delayed till the middle of September, I would say try to do that. Because with Venus retrograde, with Mercury retrograde following, even more, be careful. But, if you have to sign things, just look at them, really do your best cognitively as possible. When it comes to this full moon, Mercury is not yet ready to quite start the communications or plant the seed. It will be shortly to start to take the actions that it needs to after its meetup with the Sun yesterday, related to whatever developments it is trying to create for the Taurus eclipse. And yet, with the full moon in Capricorn trining Jupiter and Taurus, there's something auspicious or clear about what needs to be done. And whether it comes true or not, how you are envisioning what your next steps are. It's a lovely full moon in that regard. The opposition to Mercury just creates, Mercury is weaker in this case right now. It just means that the decision making is likely, it's going to have a full moony flare up quality. It's going to have a kind of effulgent diva like quality. It could be that some people get offers or opportunities as something comes in to help propel that forward movement, similar to December of last year. There's certainly a possibility of something like that. But it's very curious to me, though, that all these developments take place till the middle of July, and then all of a sudden we have these retrogrades. It's almost like the first phase that occurred till April, May of last year was easier because it was smaller in scale. This next phase that builds on that first phase is bigger, it's more monumental. Everything about these transits and the eclipses that are coming up suggest that. And so when there are bigger vision changes or bigger changes that are being envisioned, I'm saying the same thing in a different way, then the adjusting and the adjustments that need to be made in order to accommodate that vision, make it happen, are also more severe and require, I want to do this and I want it to look like this, may well mean and will probably mean that a lot of what is occurring on a day-to-day basis that is not letting that thing is going to need to be dismantled and changed. How you're managing your finances and your relationships and who's in the boat with you and how your finances are aligned with you, Venus retrograde. If you know what that vision is and you know what that goal is, if through this Capricorn full moon you have a sense of where it is that you want to go, then having clarity on that might very well help you start to get ahead of how you want to plan your finances, how you want to assess your relationships by the time Venus goes retrograde in July the 23rd. When Mercury goes retrograde August to mid-September, you are going to have to catch up with all the developments that occur until then. Your mind is going to have to catch up. Again, adjustments are going to need to be made. Where am I? What do I not know? What is in my blind spot? What have I missed? Let it come to the surface. Let it alarm you, disappoint you, surprise you, give you a reality check. That is what a Mercury retrograde really is about, outside of all the mundane frustrations it creates. Okay? I think I'm going to have to do a two-part video on this because it's already 17 minutes and I don't like my videos to go past the 20-minute mark. Other transits that are worth thinking about. The North Node continues to square Pluto. North Node in Taurus. Still, the Taurus part of the chart. Focus on that. What do you want to build? Mars getting ready to trine the North Node from Leo and into Virgo. Amazing. Action needing to be taken to support the North Node in Taurus going into Aries. Again, it's that same pull. Venus conjuncting Mars as of right now, but by the middle of July not being able to make that conjunction. Pregnant with opportunity, pregnant with vision. That is where we should be right now, in a way that supports what we're trying to build in the Taurus part of the chart. At least let us have the idea of how to do this. It's a full moon in Capricorn ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in Pisces, ruled by Neptune, which is in Pisces, and Jupiter, which is in Taurus, ruled by Venus, which is in Leo, and Leo's ruled by the Sun, and the Sun is in Cancer, and that brings us back to the Moon. So the ultimate dispositors of the chart are the Moon and Neptune. Goodness. Unpacking that gives me a headache. My darlings, this is a full moon in which you have to try and achieve two things. You may get something physical, something real that supports you. You might get a job offer, you might get something, an opportunity that supports that Taurian development. It's possible over the next 48 to 72 hours. Great. There are a few times when we are really supported with dreamy envisioning, inspired envisioning. And this is one of them. The other thing that is important is my last video I did on Pluto spending the last of its time in Capricorn for the second half of this year and briefly in late next year. And Pluto's completing its transformation in Capricorn also gives some time to thinking about, take a look at my last video, what needs to be completed in that sign of Capricorn, especially in the second half of this year, to aid you in moving forward and to help Pluto complete its transformation for your benefit. It could be that this full moon you also decide, I have had enough of my attachment to, addiction to these kinds of things that Pluto has been trying to get rid of, because at least making a more decisive, I can't tell you about what it's like to change habits, at least taking a decisive stance in that direction might also help contribute to how to manifest whatever it is that you're trying to manifest in the Taurus part of your chart. I don't need to do a new video. I'm very satisfied with this one. Enjoy the full moon. Things get even more dynamic. This is a full moon of envisioning, and if there are opportunities that come up that take you in the Taurus direction, pay attention to them, okay, that are similar to things that came up in November, but particularly December of last year, 2022, okay? Because by the time we get to the new moon in Cancer, it is time for action. Okay, share, comment, like, subscribe, click on the bell icon and the wiggly bell on top of the bell icon to be notified when I do new videos. Thank you to everyone who does that. I know I sounded very commanding there, but it just helps get the videos circulation. If you think the information is useful, then let it be circulated. Thank you, and I'll talk to you guys soon.